You hear these words thrown around all the time, right? Gigabyte, terabyte, petabyte. They're on our phones, our laptops, in our cloud accounts. But what do they actually mean? Well, today we're going to demystify the whole thing. We're climbing the data ladder, all the way from the tiniest little bit to the absolutely mind-bending yottabyte. You know that feeling, right? When it comes to storage, bigger is always better. But how much bigger is a terabyte than a gigabyte really? And what can you actually do with all that space? Stick with me, because by the end of this, you're going to have a real, tangible feel for the true scale of our digital universe. Okay, let's start at the very, very beginning. Everything, and I mean everything, in the digital world starts right here, with one single bit. It's the simplest switch imaginable, on or off, yes or no, a 0 or a 1. Every single photo you take, every song you listen to, it's all built from billions and billions of these tiny little decisions. So how do you get from a simple on-off switch to, actual information? Simple. You group them together. If you take 8 of those little bits, you get what's called a byte. Now, with 8 bits, you suddenly have 256 possible combinations of on and off, and that's enough to represent every letter, number, and symbol on your keyboard. So that one character, the letter A, that's 1 byte. It's the fundamental building block. All right, so we've got our basic building blocks, the bit and the byte. Now, it's time to start climbing. We're going to move up the data ladder, and I promise to put each step into a context you can actually visualize. Let's kick things off with some of the units you might remember from the good old days of computing. So, our first major jump takes us to the kilobyte. And just like a kilogram or a kilometer, that kilo prefix just means 1,000. So 1 kilobyte is simply 1,000 bytes. Easy enough, right? But what does a kilobyte look like in the real world? Well, by today's standards, it's pretty tiny. Think about a super short text-only email, or maybe a single page from a book. We're not talking about a lot of data here, but hey, it's our first real step up that ladder. Now let's multiply that by another 1,000. We've just hit the megabyte, which is 1 million bytes. Now we're starting to get into file sizes that feel a lot more familiar. So what can you get for a megabyte? Well, a pretty decent quality photo from your phone, for one. A typical MP3 song you download, that's about 3 to 5 megabytes. It's kind of cool when you think about it. In just 2 jumps, we went from a single letter A to an entire song. Okay, time for the next big jump, and it is another 1,000-fold leap. We have arrived at the gigabyte. This is the unit you see everywhere, on your phone plan, on your memory cards. A gigabyte is 1,000 megabytes, which means we are now at 1 billion bytes. And this is where the scale starts to get really impressive. A single gigabyte can hold almost 2 hours of crystal clear, uncompressed music. You know those old DVDs? A standard one held about 4.7 gigs. And get this, if you're streaming a movie on Netflix in 4K, you can burn through 7 gigabytes in just 1 hour. That's a ton of data. And that brings us to the biggest unit most of us deal with personally, the terabyte. For years, this has been the standard for hard drives. 1 terabyte is 1,000 gigabytes, which means we are now at 1 trillion bytes. To really wrap your head around a terabyte, just imagine this. You could store a music library of 200,000 songs on it. It's the amount of storage that became pretty standard for computers back in the late 2000s, and still is for a lot of people. It just feels like a massive, almost endless amount of personal space. But here's where things get a little weird. Have you ever bought a 1 terabyte hard drive, plugged it into your computer, and noticed that it only shows about 931 gigabytes? You're not going crazy, and nope, you didn't get ripped off. Let's clear up this super common confusion once and for all. The whole thing boils down to this. Humans and computers count differently. We humans and the marketers who sell us stuff, we love the decimal system, base 10. It's nice and round. A kilobyte is a clean 1,000 bytes. But computers, they live in a binary world, base 2. For them, the math works out differently. A kilo isn't 1,000, it's 2 to the power of 10, which happens to be 1,024. To try and clear all this up, the official standards bodies created a totally separate set of names for the way computers count. Check it out. Kilobyte, mebibyte, gigabyte. So when a company sells you a 1 terabyte drive, that's 1 trillion bytes, your computer reads that and says, oh, you mean 0.93 tebibytes? The space isn't actually missing. It's just a classic case of speaking 2 different languages. Okay, so we've covered the data we deal with every day. But honestly, That's just the tip of the iceberg. The modern world, we're talking the internet, big science, global finance, it operates on a scale that makes a terabyte look absolutely microscopic. So let's step into the zettaverse. Hold on, because from here on out, every single step up is another 1,000 times leap. A petabyte is 1,000 terabytes. An exabyte is 1,000 petabytes. A zettabyte is 1,000 exabytes. And finally, a yottabyte is 1,000 zettabytes. These numbers are basically impossible for our brains to grasp, so let's try to find some perspective. So how on earth can we even begin to comprehend a zettabyte? Well, check this out. There's a calculation that estimates if you were to record and digitize every word ever spoken by every human being who has ever lived, the grand total would come out to about 42 zettabytes. Wow. Just wow. Now, the reason we even need these enormous words is that we are living through an explosion of data growth. The amount of information we're creating is just staggering. It's a digital deluge. Let's look at some numbers that really show it in action. Just look at this chart. In 2020, the entire world created and consumed around 64 zettabytes of data. But the projection for 2025? Over 180 zettabytes. We're on track to nearly triple the entire digital universe in just 5 years. That's insane. And where is all this data coming from? Well, just think about a single company, Meta, Facebook. They generate around 5 petabytes of new data every single day. That's the equivalent of 5,000 terabyte hard drives worth of information daily. Or how about this one? Every 60 seconds, 500 hours of new video gets uploaded to YouTube. The fire hose of data is just relentless, and it's only getting stronger. Every time we post or stream or share something, we're adding to it. So you'd think a yottabyte is the end of the road, right? Nope, not even close. While units like the runabyte and quettabyte were just made official, data scientists are already looking way, way beyond that, into a whole list of unofficial, totally theoretical units, including one called a fetabyte. And this brings us to a place that is just beautifully absurd. A single fetabyte is a 1 followed by 81 zeros. To put that in perspective, that number is bigger than the estimated number of protons in the entire observable universe. So the question this leaves us with is, what kind of future are we building where we might actually need a unit of measurement that vast? What on Earth, or maybe beyond, will we ever need to measure with that?